All right, here we go. So this video is about RRSPs and it's about seed versus crop. So the theory is, if you're a farmer, would you rather get taxed on the seed or taxed on the entire crop? And the answer is pretty simple when you think about it like that. But when it comes to RRSPs, somehow we think about things a little bit differently. So I just want to shed a little bit of light on that. And we're going to talk about taxation of RRSPs and, savings versus benefits. And if I have time, I'm going to get into an alternative that might help. So there's a couple things we need to baseline here. So we're going to be talking about a 35-year-old male living in BC who makes $150,000 a year. That's going to be our starting point. So $150,000 a year. No other income. So his average tax rate is going to be 28.93%, and the marginal tax rate is going to be 40.70%. So he pays $43,000, $391 in taxes, provincial and federal, every year. So he's left with an income of $106,609. That number is important. We're going to get back to that later when we're calculating the future value of money as well. But what's important right now is his marginal tax rate. So what we have here is somebody from the IB Canada group built us this calculator, which is amazing. Thanks to Scott. So we plug in our numbers here. Age 35. He's going to contribute until age 65. So that's 30 years of contribution, $150,000 in income, and his contribution amount is $26,500, which is the limit before you start getting taxed extra on over contribution. We're going to give him a 6.5% growth on his fund, which is, fairly aggressive, with a marginal tax rate 38.29. Let me just double check that. Marginal 40.70. Okay, so his average savings per year, so this is what the government basically gives him a credit for, is $10,000, $786. So he's going to contribute $795,000 over his 30-year contribution period. And the government's investment in him is $323,565. And the value of his portfolio at age 65 is 2.4 million. So it's 2,437,751. Age at death, so 84 and a half is the average life expectancy for a male in Canada. So we're going to roll with that. So that gives him 20 years in retirement. And he's going to still have a fairly aggressive portfolio. We gave him 3% in retirement to be generous. I wouldn't advise that. A 2% would be maybe a little bit more realistic because as you see the volatility, even in the bond market these days, things change pretty quick and, you don't want to risk your retirement. So we'll take a look at what that looks like for this gentleman here. So if he just lived off the interest, so his 3% a year on his 2.4 million, that would give him an income of $73,000, 131 in his retirement. But with RRSPs, they're tax deferred, not tax free, which means he's going to pay 18.18% income tax on that 73,000. So he's in a lower tax bracket than when he was working, which I don't know about you, but I don't want to retire in a lower tax bracket. I'd rather have more money coming in, but this is the RRSP plan here he has. So he's going to pay $13,000, $756 in income tax every year. So he's going to have about a $60,000 a year income when he's 65, which that maybe sounds okay, but the next thing we're going to go over is the future value of money. And, you know, everybody's aware of the government's 2% target for inflation. And let's take a look at what that does, what that looks like in 30 years, because it's easy to say, oh yeah, 2% is not much, but over 30 or 50 years, it starts becoming critical. So he's going to pay $275,000 in tax just on that interest portion. Remember, he still has his 2.4 million in capital. So when he passes away, whatever age that is, he's not drawing down on it. That's going to get taxed at 51.5%. So he's going to, if he passes away at any time with $2.4 million in a registered account, he's going to get taxed at he's going to get taxed 1.2,054,935. And including, let's just say he did die at 85 and didn't draw it down, he paid his $275,000 in taxes. He would have paid total $1.53 million in taxes. So he paid $1,530,000 and 56 in order to save $232,565 on taxes. So that's 4.7 times more, or 372.9% more than what he saved. So it's, the tax deferral seems like a good idea, but you end up paying, you know, almost 5 times more in this situation in taxes. So now you say, okay, he's not living off the interest. Like what does it look like if he's drawing down his interest and his principal, right? Because you don't want to, nobody wants to be stuck with that huge 50% tax bill at the end of the day, right? So if he was drawing down his interest and his principal, that would give him an income of $163,853 in his 20 years of retirement. So his average tax rate is 27.7% on that. So he'd end up paying $906,761 in taxes throughout his retirement. So again, he paid $906,000 in order to save $323,000. So that's about 2.8 times, or 180.2% more than what he saved. Now, you go, okay, well, you know, $162,000 in retirement income, that sounds pretty good. You know, if we look over here, 163,853. So he ends up paying $45,000 a year in taxes. He ends up with $118,000 a year. You know, okay, that sounds okay. And he doesn't have the big tax bill at the end. Well, there's one other problem that we need to look at here, and that is the future value of money. So he's making $150,000 a year now. That puts him, after tax income, puts him at $106,609. So if we look at the future value of that money, after 1 year, that 106 turns on 108. So let's look at retirement. So 30 years down the road here, he would need $192,000 and $192,004 to equal the same purchasing power as his $106,000. And it gets better. You know, by the time he's 85, that turns into $285,000, $308 a year. So your $106,000 today, if you're 35 years old, when you retire, you're going to need $192,000. And by the time you're 85, that's going to crank up to $285,000. So all of a sudden, his $118,000 in his retirement isn't sounding that good, especially if you have to pay 3 times more tax than what you saved. So that kind of outlines the problem and what we're looking at here for RRSPs. But then you're probably going, okay, Andrew, what the heck is the solution here, right? Like, what do we do? So I'm going to show you a life insurance contract now. So we have the same guy, 35 years old, and let's go apples to apples. So he's doing a $26,000, 500 contribution every year. So now if we scroll down to age 65, he's going to contribute until he's 65. So we'll look at age 66. So these are a little bit funny. So we got to do a little bit of math here because the dividends don't necessarily tell you the whole story here, because there's dividends and there's also guaranteed growth within life insurance contracts. So if we go 1984324 minus the last year's cash value, so that's 1856688. That equals $127,000, but he's 65 and he's not working anymore, so we're going to have to pay his premiums out of the growth. So if we minus the 26,500 off the growth, so that gives him when he turns 66, he's going to have $101,000 tax-free income. Now, the reason why this is tax-free is because we can set up an insured retirement strategy where you take out loans. So loans are not taxable, and the growth within these policies is also not taxable. So this is going to set him up with, at age 66, when he draws down his first year, $101,000 of tax-free income. Now you go, Andrew, well, you said I needed $190,000. How is that going to work? Well, he still has basically $1.9 million in capital. That is just the growth, right? That's just the growth on the policy for that year, minus the premiums. So he does have some room where he can draw down that extra 90 if he needs it. Now, okay. But the thing is, there's a quote, it's compound interest. Those who don't understand it, pay it. Those who do, earn it. So this is just for the first year of retirement, and this number is going to be increasing steadily throughout his retirement. So if we look at age 85, just like the other example here, we'll clear that off. So if we go 6,044,262 minus 5,743,018 minus the 26,500. So that puts him at $274,744 in growth in the policy. So all of a sudden, insurance is looking pretty good, considering if he did die. So considering at age 85, there's a $6 million cash value that's compounding. And let's just say he went crazy and spent the whole $6 million in 20 years, right? They would still deliver a $1.3 million death benefit. So actually, well, the death benefit's $7,328,000. But if he had drawn down that $6 million, that's where the death benefit would cover that, and it would still deliver an extra $1.3 million once the policy loans were cleared to his beneficiaries. So the difference between $7.3 million or zero, or if he died with the 2.4 million and had to pay 51% tax, which he would leave about $1 million, starts to become pretty significant, especially if you look at, there's no actual tax on this, right? Like if that's why it's important to work with an authorized infinite banking practitioner to help you strategize and make sure you have a tax-free retirement income strategy. Yeah, just circling back to the future value. At age 85, he'd need a $285,000 a year to equal the $106,000 policy. So all of a sudden, he's pretty much in the ballpark to keeping up the same lifestyle as when he was working full time. Whereas if we look at the other examples, a $60,000 a year retirement income, living off the interest, by the time he's 65, he's going to be severely short. He's going to be about $120,000 short. And if he's living off the principal and interest, he's going to be about $80,000 short to begin with. And, it's going to get ever worse and worse every year. Every year further into his retirement, he's going to feel poor because his income isn't going to keep going up, but inflation keeps going up. And this is a situation a lot of our seniors find themselves in today, right? And it's tough. It's tough out there. So I think I've blabbed on enough. If there's anything else, I'd love to hear your comments. I'd love to hear some feedback on this video. I want to start teaching more, offering more value to you guys. I hope this was enlightening and kind of give you food for thought. Do you want to pay tax on the seed, or do you want to pay tax on the crop? Or do you want to not pay tax at all? Because that's the camp I'm in personally. So with that, I'll end it. Thank you guys.